Thanks for tuning in for another session of Back Porch Catechetics. This short video reviews Catechism of the Catholic Church 2551 to 2557. The in brief section on the 10th Commandment. You shall not covet your neighbor's goods. As a quick review and thinking about where we are for the 10 Commandments, of course we're at the 10th, and you'll recall if we list them out in a standard catechetical pattern, we've got a couple of observations. We'll split 1 to 3 as love God and 4 to 10 as love neighbor. And so the 10th commandment, is clearly about loving your neighbor. And then we'll also split, 1 through 4 in terms of positive commandments, do it this way, from commandments 5 to 10, which are like negations or prohibitions, do not do it this way. So the 10th commandment, the final commandment in a way, is a prohibition about our neighbor, a prohibition about desiring our neighbor's goods. Now, there's another kind of distinction that shows up here, and that's between the 9th and the 10th, because the 4th through the 8th are about doing particular things that really could be determined in the external world or outside of yourself, right? I mean, another person could observe whether you are honoring your father and mother, or whether you're killing, whether you're committing adultery, whether you're stealing, whether you're bearing false witness, provided the other person knew all of the things going on. But it's not entirely clear that anyone else could look at you and determine whether you are coveting your neighbor's wife or whether you are coveting your neighbor's goods. Now, often we know other people and we know their internal states, but my point is simply there's a real shift in these final 2 commandments, and that's about internal things with the commandments as opposed to external things with the commandments. Well, the 10th commandment then clearly indicates that the Decalogue is not simply concerned with external actions, but also with internal sensibilities, and that's a profound shift. The divine law, even in the Old Testament, forbids desiring the wrong things. And perhaps for this reason, sometimes the 9th and the 10th are elided and put together or separated in different ways. The traditional Catholic articulation is that, lust gets its own commandment, the 9th. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, and that's separate from the kinds of coveting of goods collected in the 10th commandment. So, we've got here a prohibition against wanting. And this seems weird because it's not clear that we're always in control of what we want. We're not always in control of the internal bits. So the 10 commandments here are articulating that in some sense we need to master our desires or our wants. And if for no other reason, this is at least telling us, that there's a connection between our desires and our actions. And we know this really to be true. It's like if you think about something for long enough, you might start wanting to do it that way. If you want something long enough, you're going to act on it. And so this is kind of like, let's go to the root of the problem. Let's be sure that in addition to, knowing that we should not do this thing, we should not even really want it, reflect on it, meditate on it. Profound shift, a new depth in our sense of the Decalogue when we get towards the end. It's certainly not the case that the last commandments are just the last few details, or, that they're the least of the commandments. The divine law, even in the Old Testament, forbids desiring the wrong things. Stealing as an action is separated from coveting another's goods. Now, when we were talking about stealing, we said this seems to uphold property rights, that people can possess things. And so we want to link the 7th commandment with the 10th commandment, which is like, you should not desire to steal. This, again, shows that there's something good about other people's property, right? We can sort of summarize from this that property is not in itself bad. Owning things, taking care of things, having stewardship, dominion, this is sort of a background concept in both of these. So that'll come out in traditional meditations or reflections upon both the 7th and the 10th commandment. In other words, someone else has to possess a thing before we can covet it or desire it. And so possession of that thing is sort of assumed. Someone else has to possess a thing before we can steal it or take it. Now, in terms of desiring other things, there are a couple of different distinctions we'll make. And so it's not just that we're thinking about removing a thing physically, but we might want to talk about, doing it physically and doing it emotionally. And maybe we want to say intellectually or spiritually. Maybe we want to add some other term in here. And these are all different modes in which we could desire another thing, right? I like your car, right? So, here's me, and man, I'm looking at your car. And I think, wow, that's a really nice car. All right, well, one way of desiring the car is to say, what I really want is I want this car for myself. I want your thing for me. But there's another sense in which I might want it, right? I might not actually want the car. I mean, who cares? I have a car I can get from A to B. It's not a vehicle I want, but it's some kind of status that the car gives me. And so maybe I'm thinking, well, what I really want is the car to give me this status, and it's like, hey, I'm number one. Everybody likes me if I have that car. That might be a kind of emotional or intellectual thing that goes along here. And the point here is that the commandment does not simply prohibit wanting someone else's fancy car, but it also indicates that we should not want the status or the power that our neighbor has from that. We don't want to take it away from that person. And so sometimes we separate, like what we might call jealousy for status from envy for possessions. And sometimes you'll see these articulated in different ways. I'm not meaning to say this is the only way to go about defining these terms, but we might give technical meanings and say one would be I want the material thing, and the other would be I want the emotional thing. There's also a sense in which maybe I don't want it for myself, but in fact I'm thinking of you, and what I really want is just to block you from having it. And so there could be a sense of like, I want to prevent you from having the car, or I want to prevent you from having the status. I don't necessarily want it. I just want you not to have it. All right, these are all different ways that we might transgress the 10th commandment, desiring the neighbor's goods. Regardless of the technical distinctions we make here, the 10th commandment says that we should not spend our time longing after what others have. Right, well, I think that's pretty clear, right? I mean, we all get that other people have their things, and well, if we want them to do well, we should want them to have good things. But then what do we say about wanting good things for ourselves? Is it somehow problematic to want good things? I mean, how far do we want to separate? Oh, I see your fancy car, and I think I'd like one for myself. I mean, I'm not going to go steal your car in the middle of the night, but I want to go buy that same car. Well, there's a fine line there. We know that there are things like peer pressure that we would want to evaluate for how pure is my motive, or do I really want the car for the sake of the car, or is it because I'm trying to accomplish some other goal? Humans have mixed motives. But in this, we also need to think about separating, an unholy sadness about what we lack from a holy sadness from what we lack. So if we were to redraw this diagram and think, not just in terms of what is it that I am without, from someone else. I wish that I had your thing. But rather, if I were simply to consult myself, and I were to look at myself, and I'm doing, this introspection, right? I'm thinking about myself, and I'm looking here, and I think, wow, in this list of things, I'm missing some things. I want them. I don't have it. All right, now we have to ask, is this coveting in the sense it transgresses the 10th commandment, or is this a holy sadness in what we lack? And the 10th commandment walks a fine line here. It is appropriate for me to be sad or worried that I am not as good as I could be, right? So if I'm looking at this and I'm saying, man, things I lack, and, number one is like a good thing. Oh, I lack virtue, right? Well, that's good, right? I should be sort of motivated to change my ways to improve. But perhaps some of the things that I'm looking at on there, aren't good things that I lack, but in fact, it's like, and I lack, status of my neighbor, right? In that bad way, not lack of respect, but like, oh, everybody likes my neighbor. I hope that he trips and falls, and then they like me. That's bad. So the thing that I lack might help determine whether this is a holy sadness or an unholy sadness. For students, you might realize I'm not yet prepared for the final exams this semester. And, well, that would be a holy sadness, right? You're not coveting someone else's knowledge. You're just recognizing a lack in your own. That is still in line with the 10th commandment. And, in fact, I might realize that I'm not as prepared as I should be because I chat with a classmate, and my classmate's more prepared than I am, right? So it could even be in conversation with another person, with my neighbor, I realize, wow, my neighbor's really prepared, and there's a lot that I've yet to review. I really need to go study. That is not problematic either. It's probably quite good. The problematic part comes when I think something like, man, I hope my classmate fails so that I look better. I hope my classmate gets, an F minus so that my D will all of a sudden look better. Well, that's not you preparing. That's not you getting better. That's not a holy sadness about what you lack. That's an unholy sadness about what someone else possesses in that sense. Or perhaps, you want to take things away from your classmate instead of join her in knowledge and goodness. You start rejoicing in mistakes that she makes or deficiencies she has. That would be a transgression against the 10th commandment here, in which you're coveting some possession of your neighbor. This is marked in the Catechism, paragraph 2554, where the Catechism says, the baptized person combats envy through goodwill, humility, and abandonment to the providence of God. So that goodwill is that I want good things for you, right? If we return to our sense of, thinking about my neighbor's goods, it's like, well, I see that you have a car and I'm happy for you. That's a good car for you, right? And humility is recognizing, maybe I don't have that status. That's not something that fits me right now. I'm less than my neighbor in this respect. He's stronger than I am, or smarter than I am, or holier than I am. I should try to be more like him. And abandonment to the providence of God. Maybe this is genuinely my status. I'm doing the right thing. And that can be independent of my neighbor. All right, well, Catechism 2554 highlights this fine line that the 10th commandment gives us. Christians understand that conversion of these desires takes time. It can be a complicated process. There are degrees and stages of coveting. There are different ways that we could not want someone to have it or want us to have it, and different amounts to which we could want that. It's helpful to think about those stages and to separate, do I just desire the physical thing, or do I desire the emotional bits that come from it, or is this something I want to take from my neighbor or prevent him from having, or something I want for myself? What kind of a lack is it? Is it a thing I should have? I'm lacking a good, or is it a thing I should not have? I'm lacking some evil. And why am I sad or motivated by it? Those are all helpful kind of ladders and matrices. But at the end of the day, I think the 10th commandment is pointing towards a final state. And that final state is really indicating, if we're forbidden certain desires, if we're told you should not desire this, then the flip side of that 10th commandment is what you should desire, right? So if we're saying the 10th commandment focuses on should not desire, then really that's indicating to this state that in heaven our desire will be perfected. And the way the New Testament often puts that is that God will be our all in all. Our desires, our inner workings will be perfectly aligned with our external situation. The way the prophets put it in the Old Testament is when God says through them, I will be your God, and you will be my people.